I think the biggest thing is that as agents, we need to deliver value and
Yeah,
we
that's
need to
a
be confident in the value that we deliver, right? Like,
If you are in title, mortgage, investing, or certainly if you are a real estate agent, broker, or team leader, if you're not getting updated every single week on the housing market, you're doing yourself and your clients a disservice. This is the Knowledge Brokers Podcast. I am not Tom Toole. I am Byron Lazine, along with Lisa Chinatti. We're going to do our best here to keep the pod moving while Tom goes on vacation. He gave you a lot of crap for going to Amsterdam, Lisa, and now I don't know what he's doing, probably Jersey shoring it for the weekend as the
but
weather
with all
gets.
due respect, this is not Friday. And so I think the only one that can get full credit for owning her schedule this week would be yours truly.
That is true. Tom couldn't do Friday long weekend for him. I had to do an adjustment here for Thursday afternoon. I've had a rough week after you dragged me to Dallas at the beginning of the week, but thank you, Lisa, for commenting. Thank you guys all for listening. If you're here on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. If you're on Apple or Spotify, I'd love to get a review. All right, let's get into it. FHA drops a little nugget out there, Lisa, a little hope
It's a little tasty
on
nugget.
it is a tasty nugget here to end the week. Quiet week, too. So this was good to end the week here. FHA says that seller-paid agent commissions are not considered IPCs. All right. What is an IPC? That's an interested party contribution. This morning, NAR announced that along with the MBA, the Mortgage Banker Association, that it sent a letter to FHFA, Federal Housing Authority, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and they asked that you provide confirmation of the treatment of seller or listing agent paid commissions for buyer agents by FHA and the GSCs as soon as possible. And the short letter sought to clarify common question that's been coming up this week. If a seller pays the agent commission, if a seller pays the buyer agent commission, that would be, right? We know that this is going to be something that gives sellers a competitive advantage. It's going to be something that agents are working on clarifying. Seller, and if they choose to do this, paying the buyer agent commission, does that count towards IPC limits? This is one of many questions right now that is being asked in the different scenarios that may shake out starting obviously mid-July. But a lot of knowledge brokers, Lisa, are looking to implement these changes now, get in practice now. Okay, so this afternoon, FHA updated their FAQs to clear up any confusion under the question, what costs can a seller or other interested party pay on behalf of the borrower? The update speaks directly to agent commissions. Payment of real estate agent commissions or fees typically paid by the seller under local or state law or local custom is not considered an interested party contribution. Lisa, is this big news for agents as we move in towards that mid-July date?
I mean, it's huge, right? I think one of the things that is super interesting is that we'd all been kind of a little bit worried that there would be limits to buyers who needed closing cost assistance to be able to get a seller concession to pay for buyer agency commission. I think that this is best case scenario on those FHA buyers as we could possibly get. Like on a few different levels, I'm actually like giddy about this one. I don't know about you, but for me, it's looking at it and saying, I think we were saying potentially we were having to look at taking reduced commissions to work with FHA buyers or no commission, which would lead to no representation for buyers that had both low down payments and needed seller assist for closing costs. And so, gosh, like I think I have to give this one as like probably one of the biggest W's that consumers have had. Never mind agents. This is a huge win for the consumer.
Yeah. But buyers using an FHA loan are, in a great spot now with this news. IPCs can cover the following costs for buyers up to the 6% limit. So remember, FHA has been a 6% limit. To Lisa's point, it's like, oh, is this 6% limit going to get pushed over the edge if you start talking about buyers and commission? Fannie Freddie, we're going to get to that, obviously being at 3%. But in that 6% limit, borrow origination fees, other closing costs, prepaids, discount points, payments of mortgage interest, these types of things are included in the 6%. But does not include buyer agent commission, but that leaves us now with Fannie and Freddie. There's IPC limits there that are 3%. So we're just talking basically a conventional.
Right.
If the borrower puts less than 10% down, and right now, currently, Fannie or Freddie have not clarified if their IPC limits include agent commissions. We'll see what they do. It would make sense if it's like, okay, it's in line with what FHA is, but sometimes the world doesn't make sense. What would your expectation be?
I'm going to keep my fingers very tightly crossed that they actually follow suit. And I don't think there's any reason to think that they won't. I could be wrong, but my gut says, based on everything that I'm seeing shaking out across the industry, that nobody wants this to be a deficit for the consumer, right?
This doesn't mean, though, that the consumer can like mortgage
No,
buyer commissions. This is just stating the fact that the loan FHA lenders have absolutely no issue with the seller deciding, I'm going to compensate buyer agents in this transaction. I'm going to offer comp to buyer agents, and whatever that comp is won't impact any other of the IPCs that buyer would have originally gotten up to the 6% limit.
correct. And I think kind of looking at it and saying that and so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that they can take a closing cost credit from the seller to apply towards the buyer agency commission. Is my interpretation the same?
Yeah, if they're not already, using it towards one of those other items on the 6% list, obviously we've seen this where it's like, hey, I want, 6% back in closing cost credits. That's how it would be written up. Is that how you write it up in the purchase and sale, somewhere along those lines?
Yeah, it's interesting,
Seller
right?
concession
Yeah,
up
because I
to this amount, or
yep, I think that there's going to be a couple of. I was just talking about this on the sales floor earlier today with some folks who are going through the onboarding process with us, and I was saying that I think we're going to see probably 3 or 4 different ways of writing offers shake out that take this all into account. And I can see one of them being, a purchase price subject to the seller paying a certain percentage of buyer agency commission. I think if the seller has a gut reaction to say, I'm not going to pay buyer agency commission, one of the workarounds is to take it as a closing cost credit that the buyer uses to pay for buyer agency commission. I think some of the other ways that we see it shake out, and I think it's going to depend upon how it gets interpreted based upon whether the state is a one-step state or a two-step state. So for us, Massachusetts has offer to purchase and then goes to purchase and sale. New Hampshire, we go right to purchase and sale, and there is no second doc. I could see in Massachusetts, for instance, we write offers that are at a net price to the seller and then subject to the buyer increasing the purchase price by a certain percentage to offset commissions. I think that there's a lot of different ways that it's going to shake out. How the banks interpret it depend upon what information is in the doc that gets sent to start the loan.
I remember probably for 5 years when I first started selling real estate, we'd write in almost on every mortgage deal that we put in, buyer to be paid, or seller to concession of X amount or percent to cover buyers. We would list everything just in a line: closing costs, prepaids,
Right.
escrows, points. We would just list everything to make sure that we got the maximum, because you didn't want to leave money on the table.
Correct.
Sometimes you did if you really didn't know your numbers going in. You really have to talk to the lender, make sure. Okay, so you don't want to leave money on the table. Obviously, if you do have a spread there, to your point, at least that might be able to go towards your buyer agent if the seller's not comping that. So, interesting. Little good news there for once as it relates to the changes coming in July. The better news would be if you start financing that. I think that'd be a huge win for especially first-time home buyers if that happens in the future. There's something else NAR did. So NAR is trying here to be helpful. They also urged recently VA home loan policy revision. This one, I mean, when we did our live stream, how many comments did we see where it's like, what about VA loans? What about VA loans? Well, it looks like, VA buyers are really, not in a good position right now. And hopefully this stuff changes. NAR President Kevin Sears wrote, the VA home loan guarantee program is a vital home ownership tool that provides veterans with a centralized, affordable, and accessible method of purchasing homes that benefit they earn for their service to our nation. NAR wants to ensure that VA buyers remain active participants, obviously. And so they've at least written this letter. There's more on nowbam.com if you want to read about it, but they've written this letter to try to make sure that there's some changes made to VA loans. Right now, there's going to need to be changes made in order just for the seller to offer the comp to their agent, as I understand it, right?
Oh, all right. So that wasn't necessarily my understanding.
Can a seller still make the comp? I've been very unclear on VA, so I want to make sure that I am clear. I know they can't, they're not going to be able to pay it out of their pocket, according to if they're using a VA loan.
Yeah.
Are they able to accept
Yeah. So I
seller
think
comp, which I think is going to be ordinary,
I think the key wording here, right, is under the existing policies, veterans, so the buyer, the veteran using the VA home loan benefit are barred from directly compensating their professional agent representative.
Okay.
And so my understanding and the way that I've always interpreted this was that if the seller was, or if via the listing agent was still offering comp, that it could be that the buyer agent could be compensated. I think the area that I think everybody is kind of worried about is I think that there is a perception within the industry that the moment that compensation is no longer offered in MLS, that there's an assumption that that means no sellers are going to be offering compensation. My personal feelings is that I don't think it shakes out like that. I think that there will be a
Of course not.
percentage of sellers that choose not to offer compensation, but I believe that the
I think
majority.
let's just be, I'll put it on the table. Like, I think the majority of sellers are going to offer compensation.
Mhm.
That's my belief. We'll see
Yeah, I
what ends up.
agree as well. I think but I think our beliefs are a little bit different than all beliefs, right? And so I think NAR has been reacting to the sentiment that we saw when we did our live stream, the sentiment that, gosh, every podcast or webinar that I've seen about this whole topic, it seems to be maybe not the majority, but a large portion of folks feel like the moment sellers that MLS doesn't offer the commission, that there's this misconception that it's instantly gone and nobody's offering it. And so I think NAR has kind of been trying to speak to that and say, we're trying to, in case that does happen, give consumers and maybe agents a little bit of feeling of, I don't know, not stability, but and not certainty, because there's nothing certain in this, but maybe advocacy, that they're trying to advocate for worst case scenario. But no, so my take on it is sellers still offering it, buyer agent can still be compensated. It's just in the instances when the seller is not offering compensation.
When the seller is not. And
I think what I'll also say to that, my interpretation, and again, there's a lot that goes into where all these interpretations are going to shake out, is that we can still, in a contract, right, subject to seller offering compensation to buyer's agent of, insert the number.
And that would not impact a VA loan deal as we understand it today.
I mean, it's semantics, right? I mean, truly, if you think about what we're talking about here, we're really talking about verbiage semantics, right? We're talking about the difference between, look, it's all going to come off the purchase price still. And it's the semantics of, in the contract, is it written that the seller is paying it out of the proceeds, or is the buyer bringing a separate check?
Yeah, right. It is all semantic. I mean, somebody was like, Byron, I'm convinced reading the 108-page document that listing brokers can, listen, there's 3 ways this thing gets paid. The seller pays it, the buyer pays it, they both pay it. It's all of them is their money. So, that's where the money's coming from. When people say that the listing broker, I did a breakout session yesterday, Lisa, bunch of agents. I said the fact that people think the listing broker was paying the buyer agent before was a total farce. The title rep or the attorney paid from the closing funds, took the money and sent it right to that buyer brokerage. And then the other, whatever percentage was going to the listing brokerage, right? So now the conversation really explains that, how the money is going from the closing and the funds are going, the lender's going to, where all those pieces are going. And so I think it's actually going to be a lot easier for a consumer to understand as opposed to 72 hours before the closing on the CD.
True. I think
Uh,
just my last take on this, and I've been saying this for a while. I think the biggest thing is that as agents, we just need to deliver value, and
yeah,
we
that's
need to
a
be confident in the value that we deliver, right? Like it
the, the privilege and the right that we all have as licensed real estate agents to go and have the opportunity to provide this level of value that impacts 20% GDP, that impacts
right.
the ability for our clients to have a wealth building machine that doesn't even exist in other countries when you factor in the 30-year fixed mortgage and all these different things. It's a huge opportunity. It's a huge privilege to be able to do that. So yeah, we owe it to them to provide extreme value. We owe it to them to work on our craft like hell, to make it better, to innovate it, to keep tweaking the model. And there's going to be a lot of people that lean into that, and some that don't. But that's just the way it goes. The way it's kind of always been. There's been plenty of change we've all faced. Okay, somebody who is, I don't know, cheering on the change would be President of the United States of America, Joseph Biden Jr. What he said about the NAR settlement. He had some tax credit too. So he had a new tax credit that will give Americans $400 a month for the next 2 years. That he was talking about in housing. I don't know much about. I haven't dug much into
We
that.
we talked about that. I think maybe Tom and I did on one of the pods that you weren't here for.
Okay,
It's stupid. It's stupid.
it's that dumb that we don't even talk about it again.
Well,
A
I
typical
mean,
home purchase. I mean, this is what it says in front of me. A typical home purchase, I can save folks on average 10,000 on the sale or purchase, and
not
President
scale. It's
Biden's
on
calling on
purchase.
realtors to follow through and lowering their commissions to protect home buyers. Actually, I did see that quote
Yeah,
before.
well, the credit, it's a, credit on their taxes basically, but, where Tom Toole and I went with this is we need to be incentivizing the way to solve the problem isn't to put more buyers into the market.
Oh yeah,
The way to
yeah, I
solve the
agree with this.
problem is we've gotta look at the inventory and the supply issue, right? We don't need more demand, we don't need more buyers. That's ultimately just going to actually drive prices up even more. And where the president needs to be focusing some of his policy and his attention and maybe some of his thoughts are how do we make it sustainable to create more inventory? What are the policy changes that need to happen either to create more inventory to solve some of the reasons that people aren't selling, right? Whether it's Tom Toole and I had chatted about some of the what's it called? The tax that when you've owned a home, capital gains taxes, right? Like some
Yeah,
of those things have just gotten so far out of control that it's not worth it for people to sell
yeah,
homes.
I agree. Giving a tax break to convince, I want more people to become homeowners, and so incentivizing to a tax break, which I think, by the way, is fine. I'm not against the tax break for home buyers. I just agree with you. Don't
Yeah.
think it's going to
It's
solve
not
any
gonna solve the
problems.
problem. I actually
And
think it makes it worse.
no, it inflates prices more. We know
Mm.
that when you get more first time home buyers competing against 40% of the market, which is made up of a cash buyer, it just drives price up. He did, President Biden did say at one point in his speech, build, build, build. And that angle is going to be very lucrative leading into November for not just the presidential candidates, but for all politicians to really start. We need to build more. We need to do more. But there are easy things in front of them that they could implement like tomorrow. One of those would be, and these don't, now listen, I'm not saying these are going to move the needle, but if you were to say, hey, we're going to take away you just mentioned the capital gains for anyone on a second home, vacation home, investment home for the next 12 months. We just want to give a little pop here to this inventory crisis that we have. We're going to give some capital gain breaks on real estate. Things like that could help get some inventory onto the market, because there are folks who are sitting on homes that they don't use all the time or don't need. And so some of those things could help a little bit. You got to incentivize. Unfortunately, you have to incentivize builders and ease up the process of them getting through regulations on the front end. It's very expensive to hold the land and get in. But let's get into his.
Well, and what I'll also say, the other one that I think could be addressed is move up buyers or downsize buyers who are hesitant to give up the rate. I think instead of giving the credit to first time buyers, we need to give the credit to those that are feeling the effects of the lock-in, right?
Yeah.
We could, help alleviate some of the burden of moving from a 3% interest rate to a 6.91% interest rate, even if it's for 2 years. I think that's where there could be some benefit that would help free up the inventory and kind of unlock things. But first-time buyers are it's not the right segment to incentivize.
I like that. The LIC, the lock-in credit. Lisa just created it. She's going to be running mayor of Boston one day.
No. All right. What else you got about our lovely president?
Mayor of Chelmsford or mayor of Boston? Which one would you go for?
Oh, God. Well, Chelmsford doesn't have a mayor, so I'd have to go. And I don't live in Chelmsford, so that becomes probably problematic. I'd go Boston if I had to, but politics are not my jam. I'm not politically correct enough.
Who would vote for Lisa? All right. This is what the president said about National Association of Realtors. Well, the National Association of Realtors appreciate. Oh no, that was their response. What did he say?
Well,
he just said
that he
said the quote, "I'm calling on realtors," and then we'll get into NAR's response. "I'm calling on realtors to follow through on lowering their commissions to protect home buyers."
Well, didn't he also take credit for the verdict, basically, like at the settlement?
He takes credit for a lot, but that's what you can do when you're at the top. You can take credit for anything you want.
It's disgusting.
He was applauded for that statement about the settlement. The industry knows that this is kind of a false, or not kind of, this is a false narrative that's been on media outlets. It was almost as if he was just reading the headline, that he hasn't dug in maybe completely on the settlement. And he didn't mention anything about what this would do to home buyers. He said protect them. He didn't mention what the implications are if they didn't have representation during this process. So, of course, I think we all agree he kind of missed the mark on that comment, and NAR did issue a response. While the association appreciates President Biden's continued focus on the affordable housing crisis, which we can all relate to that, the president unfortunately repeated incorrect claims that the recently announced settlement agreement allows Americans to negotiate commissions for the first time. Commissions were already negotiable before this resolution was reached and will continue to be negotiable as they have been. Real estate agent commissions are driven by the market and are not the cause of affordability crisis. There is an all-of-government approach to historic lack of inventory and supply in communities across the country. The dream of home ownership will remain out of reach for millions of middle-class Americans. NAR commends President Biden for recognizing the need to build a stronger housing supply, and we will continue to work with his administration and Congress, as well as state houses across the country, to fight for policy proposals intended to make homeownership affordable and accessible for Americans. So what they said there, the administration, the presidential administration can't do much, but Congress can. And if they work with Congress to do some of the things like the one that you just mentioned, or state houses across the country to do different policies that can increase inventory, you could have a case being made that would be a good use of time. That would potentially work. The presidential administration, I don't think can do much. They might be able to influence Congress, sway Congress into doing something. Jerome Powell can't do anything because his mandate from Congress is to just stabilize inflation at 2%, maximize employment while he does that. And for him to get there, if more people rent, he's totally cool with that. However, he gets there, it's not home ownership and home prices. He said many times don't really factor into his job or his role at the Federal Reserve. So, anything on NAR's comments there, Lisa?
No, I mean, I think they're fairly self-explanatory. I have my feelings about all of it. You know what? I'm just disappointed that, like, one of the big things that we keep saying is that this was all to protect the consumer, and I'm frustrated that everybody is saying that this is a win for the consumer. And the more and more that I just really step back to stop and think about it and think about what the impacts are going to be, right? I think, we think about financials as one of the bigger impacts, but I just look at all the negatives to it. And, I think one of the big ones that we haven't spoken about, I know I mentioned this, I think you and I were chatting when we were in Dallas the other day. Like, I think from the dual agency side, which I think some people do think will come into play a little bit more, I don't think anyone really thinks that buyer agents are going to start charging nothing, right? I think everybody just thinks that buyers will potentially go direct to listing agents a little bit more. Is that kind of your take on it?
I think that's going to happen in probably an increased scenario.
Okay.
Not the. I don't think that's going to be the overwhelming default for
No,
buyers.
I don't think so either, right? Like, I don't. But the interesting thing that I think, like, when we talk about those that do choose to go the dual agency route, I'm super cognizant that, we've talked about errors and omission claims going up a lot. But I think one of the things that I said to somebody else was, in our market, multiple offers are very, very real. And I know that this isn't true in every market, but up here it is, right? We're double-digit offers on most listings these days, right? How many offers can a listing agent actually write, even under dual agency, without opening themselves up to what my biggest concern that's going to come out of this is a lot of fair housing violations. And what do we start to do to think about that? And, like, think about it. A listing agent writes 5 offers. Maybe one of those wins, but what if one of them does win? What happens to the other 4? And there's going to be upset people and hurt feelings, and I don't know.
Especially when that listing agent is involved in showing the home to these agents and they're there, and maybe you met 3 of them in person but didn't meet the other 2 in person, and one of the other 2 has a higher price tag, but yet one of the 3 that was met, that's where you get into
And I think the lack of
just opening up for lawsuits.
and the lack of transparency, right? Like, when stuff closes in MLS, we're going to see a price, but what we're not going to know is what was actually fully in on the price, right? And I think from that perspective, I think that there's going to be some appraisal issues potentially shake out. I actually hadn't had that on my radar till fairly recently as I was starting to think about that. Because I've been saying, you know what, I'm not too worried about appraisals because we actually haven't missed in a good chunk of time, and we've been appreciating well enough where I wasn't too worried. But I do have appraisals, maybe slightly more on my radar. But I think, as some of that kind of shakes out and you start to see maybe prices close for less than what you offered because there was a difference in what really truly the net to the seller was, and it's not totally clear. I don't know. I think that there's a lot that's still going to shake out from this that as an industry, we need to be very cognizant of and do some education with the public and the consumers to make sure we're not putting ourselves into a position where not good stuff happens. How about that?
We know that in 2024, your business operations will be more important than ever. Once I figured this out, my business was able to scale and take off. See, generating leads is one thing, but getting that deal across the finish line while keeping everyone happy is another story. Enter Mosaic, everything you need once a lead becomes a client. Mosaic picks up where CRMs leave off to streamline the client experience and maximize your productivity. It's the operating platform that gives agents and teams everything they need to stay organized and proactive throughout the entire transaction process and beyond. Transaction management, forms, AI-powered collaborative search, client retention capabilities, and advanced analytics for your business. In other words, you can use Mosaic to create a powerful flywheel for your business. It will help you close every deal, boost your profitability, and generate more repeat and referral business. If you need a better way to run your business, check out the link below and learn how Mosaic can help you today. Yeah, totally agree. I think there's going to have to be a real. I keep going back to it. The more I think about the buy side, and I believe that consumers are really going to continue to want a representation on their behalf when they're buying, particularly the ones who are hurt most by this, which is first-time home buyers and VA buyers, like we mentioned.
Yeah.
And that, they're particularly impacted there. And they're, first-time home buyers are obviously the ones that need the most education representation. It's such a huge leap the first time you're buying a home, not just to know the area and the market and all of that, but what it entails, home ownership. Should I be investing 1, 2, 3% back into the home just to maintain it? These aren't upgrades, like all these nuances of being a homeowner that really don't even factor into just the mortgage payment, everything around it on top of it, the move, all this stuff. You need that representation, and people are going to want it.
I think even just, what just popped in my head, I was just sitting on the floor a couple hours ago talking with an agent and one of our sales managers about a situation where buyer put in an offer on a home after a previous offer fell apart. And I can see these shaking out all over the country over and over, right? So we go in, what happened? There was a foundation issue. Seller has a quote, $6,000. We're going to have it repaired prior to closing. And our agent did a phenomenal job in representing that buyer and said, you know what? Let's get a second quote. Let's actually dig in. And we had a professional come out, and you know what? It's not $6,000. It's $6,000 to fix the visible issues. But if you don't fix the underlying cause, the issue is going to keep recurring in this particular property. And you know what the price tag is? $20,000 for a buyer putting down 3.5% buying their first home. Like, imagine if that buyer didn't get the representation and was just told, you know what, we're going to fix it, or we're going to give you $6,000 off the price so that you can take care of this fix for the visible problem without solving the issue. And that's the stuff where, right? Like,
yeah. And so I keep coming back to what you just explained sounds very time consuming. What I was talking about with all the other dynamics there that go into buyer representation, it's very time consuming for the guide, for the trusted advisor, the agent.
Yeah.
Tom Ferry, I think when we were in Dallas hanging out with TF, I think he said 148 hours was the survey from that T360 ran. Am I right on that? I think it was 148.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
148 hours on average that a buyer agent works with a buyer. I mean, there's sometimes people are like, that's light because I've been working with these folks for 3-4 years, right? We know so many of those situations. So I keep coming back to, and I've got in these debates a lot over the years, but now more than ever, I'm really leaning towards the belief that to do this at a really high level, to demand a particular fee that's worth what you're putting into it, you're going to have to be full. This is a career. You're going to have to really be fully all in.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, and I think Tom Toole made the point on a recent pod where it's like, doesn't mean there's not a transitional period coming in.
Yep.
You're learning the business. You got to eat. Totally get that. But I've debated people where it's like, I've worked a full-time job for 10 years and done deals when I want. It's just, I just don't know that can work the same way it may have in the past.
Right.
With the layers in this business that you need to keep doing to be, really that high-class professional. So, I don't know. I keep coming back to that. I know you probably have more empathy towards somebody who might be in the part-time category, Lisa, because you're just a bleeding heart. But
No, I'm
any
not, and no, no, no,
no.
no.
All right. Uh, Keller Williams is bleeding from all angles as they face 4 lawsuits tied to its profit sharing
What is it, 4
program.
now?
It's 4 according to Housing Wire. Yeah.
Wow, I
This
thought
was
2.
yeah, faces 4 lawsuits tied to profit. One of the plaintiffs seeks damages of 250
Million.
million.
Yep,
So 4 agents that were formerly affiliated with KW Realty have taken legal action against the brokerage by filing 3 separate class action lawsuits. So it's like, let's just stack up the suits, kind of like what you're seeing in, the seller lawsuits. They contest that alterations made by Keller Williams' profit sharing program, with one of them seeking a court order to halt further payouts
yep.
um, until this case concludes. This is all happening in the U.S. District Court for Western District of Texas. This really took place from, I guess, 2002 to 2000, or no, worked for Keller from 2002 to 2011. Allegations include breach of contract, unjust enrichment.
Yeah, because in 2020, they changed it so that if you left the company and went to a competing company, your profit share ceased to exist, right, after 2020. But for the agents who had left the company before 2020, their profit share was supposed to go on in perpetuity until that agent leadership council meeting, maybe last year.
Yeah, the original version of the program was launched in '87.
Yep.
The concept was introduced in '86. So this dates a while back. That
You know what I was surprised by is
alteration, I think, happened in 2019 or 2020.
no, I'm pretty sure it was 20. Well, the first alteration happened in 2019 to take effect in 2020, if my memory is
Okay.
correct. And then in 2023, at one of the either mega camp or family reunion, I'm sorry, I'm not.
Mega camp. Yeah,
Yeah,
mega camp in Austin.
they changed it to say that at a certain point, it would agents, if they didn't return to the company, that was the kicker. If they had left and wanted to maintain their profit share, they needed to return to the company.
Yeah, and here it is. Under the updated policy, vested agents who joined before April 1, 2020
Yep.
and actively compete with KW brokerages would see their profit share reduced from 100%
To
to
5.
5%.
That's
So
crazy, isn't it?
pretty significant drop there. There's also one of these lawsuits I was reading has a claim that they were taking some of this money and going and investing in other companies. Like Keller Williams has built up or invested in a whole bunch of these like side companies over the years. Some of them have been more successful than others, but there was an argument that some of the money was going in to fund these other companies that were outside of really supporting the brokerage.
Well, I think one of the other interesting things in here was that they anticipated that they'd be sued over this, and they stipulated something about if a suit happened, that a percentage of it would be automatically funneled into a defense fund for it. So like based on the way that it was structured, they knew that they were going to get sued right away. It's, you know what? One more reason I hate downlines.
Well, this is, yeah. There you go. Lee says, do not cancel the pod if you're in a downline, for Lisa's comments. But this was obviously, KW was losing agent count to obviously
They were.
EXP, who really
Yep.
did extremely well recruiting away from the brand for many years. And then now Real is doing pretty well.
But
Obviously
interestingly,
with their agent count.
the first 2 agents that filed are at neither of those. They're at more traditional brick and mortars in the local market.
It's true. They didn't go to either of
They
those.
didn't. And those agents' takes was very interesting, that they spent a portion of their time, instead of selling real estate and building their real estate business, that they invested a portion of their time to build their downline. And
Yeah.
that they felt like they wouldn't have
They had made that
service.
investment.
Right. And they wouldn't have done that if they had known that that downline would cease to exist. And I think some of them even said, when they moved to that traditional brick and mortar, that they chose not to recruit the agents away from KW because they were still reaping the benefits of it.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was really kind of fascinating to read, right? And I don't know, it's just an interesting
Well, that's a good point because we've seen people that are really successful building a downline in these profit sharing models don't have a lot of time left over to sell many
Correct.
homes. We've seen that. It's really rare where you do both. I mean, Kyle Whistle, who you and I both know, he continues to pull off both early in at EXP, but still has a successful team. So, there's a lot, as many, I can name a lot more that really just gave up that are successful. Now, keep in mind, there's only, and I know the number at Real, I don't know the exact number at EXP, but I hear it's even lower or right around the same number. There's only 11% of the agents at Real Brokerage is directly from the CEO. So this isn't, you know, this isn't like hearsay, directly from Tamir, and it's on a pod here or over on the Now Bam channel. But only 11% of Real agents even collect in the revenue share, right? Because you have to have a certain downline. EXP's around there or even lower. So the majority of the agents, 9 out of 10, do not even collect in revenue share in these models, although that is typically the carrot of why some it'll factor in at least to make the decision to go over there. So the ones that really do get into the club of profit sharing have to spend a lot of time getting there, and so that might be an argument where it's like, yeah, this was the deal, but they've all, I don't know what rights, I'm not an attorney, Keller Williams has here to change the rules after the fact, but the profit sharing models do change the rules from time to time. Real's made adjustments multiple times, even in the last couple of years. EXP's made a number of adjustments to how the model works, because as you get bigger, if you don't adjust things in those models, you can start losing money very quickly,
Right.
and they don't want to be in a position to be losing money. All right. Now agents suing agents,
Yeah.
adding to the lawsuits, and we have more lawsuit news here on the industry news segment of the Knowledge Broker Pod. Moehrl trial shifts to early 2025.
Is it
There was
Morel or
some
Merle?
Moehrl, maybe. I got Moehrl. It's a weird Moehrl.
I've always said Merle.
Moehrl. Maybe it's Moehrl. Shift into early 25. There was plaintiff attorney really trying to get that to happen earlier than that. Now it's going to be headed for an early 2025 date. This is the seller side lawsuit. Okay. So similar to what the big NAR settlement was on, and previously Remax, KW, Anywhere. And so there's one holdout really that stands in this lawsuit that was named as a defendant, and that's Berkshire Hathaway affiliate Home Services of America. So they're continuing their defense only because they haven't had the opportunity to settle yet, because they're being asked for billions and billions of dollars to settle, while NAR settled for $418 million. So I don't think this ever sees a day in court. By the time early 2025 comes, I think Berkshire Hathaway Home Services will have long settled before that. I'd expect that settlement to come in Q2, even though both sides are right now saying, plaintiffs are saying, you're not both sides. Berkshire wants to settle. All right. They're not making any public comments, but the plaintiffs are saying they're going to be paying upwards of $4 billion plus. But NAR also said that they would never settle and they would appeal, and then they all of a sudden settled. So I don't think this sees a day in court, Lisa. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I don't either. But it's interesting, the rhetoric that goes with it, right? And I don't know. I hope it also Compass, who settled for such a small fraction of what they would have potentially been on the hook for.
Compass, that formula for Compass's settlement ended up being less than a tenth of the formula. Okay, so what you're going to see now is those that are not protected really try to use the Compass model in their settlements.
Yeah.
There's a lot of brokers, though, that are in that group of the unprotected that technically aren't being. Here's the other interesting thing, Lisa. Compass wasn't technically I don't believe, not in any of the big ones, maybe in some of the smaller lawsuits, but they weren't even technically named. There's a lot of companies that aren't even technically named in a lawsuit. And so you have to sit there and decide, do I just throw my money into the pot to have protection even though I'm not being sued currently? It's an interesting decision for some of the, or do they go and take it out on NAR? Do you see brokerages come together and the ones that aren't going to do the Compass thing and do a class action against NAR?
Uh,
Uh,
so I
would that be a class action or just a group? How would that be? What would that be named?
Well, but so here's the kicker. It's the interesting thing is, right? Here's what I find fascinating. Fascinating is that the folks that were left out of the NAR settlement were, I mean, let's be real, they were mostly bigger independent brokerages. Compass, not so independent, but for the most part, we're looking at some of those bigger independents, right?
Compass, Compass not, but Howard Hanna's independent, William Ravis independent. Those are some of the bigger ones on the list. And you have a lot of just people who have built up a great business for 30, 40 years. It happens to be $2.5 billion.
Right. But for the most part, so how many agents at Ravis?
Like about 4,500, between 4 and 4,500 in that range.
Think about what that think about the annual dues generated by Ravis agents, and NAR left out to dry some of their biggest contributors of dues. What the heck?
For years, because just yesterday, Ravis, I was there, celebrated 50 years in the business. Bill Ravis, congratulations to Bill Ravis, one of the best operators, Mount Rushmore type of operator. 50 years. So that's 50 years, Lisa, of just putting in the dues.
Literally the dues, not not just like the time, literally the financial dues. And look at it from the perspective. What are the NAR dues this year? Do you remember what they were?
To
NAR?
2 or 150 or something, or are they up to 200?
I don't know. My all-in was like 700 for New Hampshire.
No, because it's 150 for 2023, 156 for 2024. The reason why it's 600 is because you have the tie-in agreement to your local, and it goes to local.
That number, that's what William Ravis alone paid to NAR just this year.
Times now they weren't 50 years ago at 45, but year after year after year after year for decades, obviously. And so
yeah, that's my point though. And then you look at all of the other indies are similar, right? The ones, not all other indies, but the ones that were left out.
Howard Hanna's bigger. Howard Hanna's bigger than William Ravis.
So tell me,
they're a monster.
Any chance that any of those guys remain members of NAR after all of this shakes out?
I think there's a better chance that they
start their own,
that they react in a way. Lisa, on your short list, if somebody was going to start their own, I think that, to answer your question, I think there's a better chance these power players, and I know nothing. This is me just pontificating. I know I always talk crap on panel pontificators, but I'll play the game right now and just.
I like this.
I think there's a better chance they sue NAR than they just sit there and.
Is there any money left to get from NAR though? I mean, that's the other side of this, right?
Maybe they do it, and then to your point, try to support a new association. Short list of associations that already exist that could maybe be the new NAR. I'm thinking, if I'm looking at a short list, I'm thinking maybe leading RE companies of the world, because they have under 25,000 brokerages or something like that in there.
But they are too exclusive. My recollection of them is that they are one per market, which would really kind of
which would alienate. So they'd have to completely change the model. Going total opposite gear there. What about a T360? Could T360, with how supportive they are of the industry, be in a position? They have the data. Do they really want to give up the business model that they have? Though all these brands, would they be willing to give up the business model? Then obviously there's folks that'll emerge that try to create some type of startup association. It's too bad because Notorious ROB, Lisa, wrote this great article about what NAR basically did. It's like real estate socialism. Like, we're just going to take care of these smaller brokerages that, to your point, probably didn't even pay a large percentage, and leave everybody, all the big guys, kind of like stuck, not knowing, I'm not even on a lawsuit. Should I just throw my money in?
Well,
Is this
some of them got
fair?
served with demand letters already. I do know that. You and I have a
Oh, yeah.
mutual friend who got served with a demand letter
Yeah.
already. So,
But a demand letter is different than being named in a lawsuit.
well,
Demand
the
letter is
demand
like,
letter is what happens right before the lawsuit.
right, but it's still not the lawsuit.
No, but
Right. I mean,
tomato, it's coming.
it's coming, and it just keeps coming. So there you go. Moehrl won't come until early 2025. What else you got, Lisa? Are we
No, I think it's a good day, and I think Tom Toole missed a good one. So whatever.
Tom did.
You know.
These numbers. Hey, if you're on YouTube right now, just jam the thumbs up button and let us know what you thought of this in the comments without Tom Toole. Really, Tom reads every comment.
Every post everywhere. I don't know where he gets the time.
Every review and every comment. So let him know how much he's in third place of your favorites, so that he can be reading that here on his vacation weekend. We'll see you guys next weekend. Lisa, talk to you soon. Thank you.
Peace.
Since April, we have uploaded new and sought after courses, content, and tactical assets for your business into the BAMX platform. Not articles behind a paywall that only pontificate to you what you should think and do, but education that actually shows you how to do what you need in today's market. Every day, we continue to add more content into BAMX and our private Facebook community. Content that works, content that our members have exclusive access to daily. It's why over 1,500 of you and climbing have joined us in BAMX. It's also why tomorrow's price is guaranteed to be higher than today's. That's called inflation. Do not wait any longer. Use code Knowledge Brokers and join the thousands of agents taking their business to the next level today. Code Knowledge Brokers for 10% off. See you in BAMX.